Life Management Science Labs would like to acknowledge that we live and produce this podcast on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. We'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands of our listeners and our international colleagues. We'd like to pay our respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. Hey everyone, and welcome to Raising Parents, the Parenting Science Insights podcast, produced by Ella Masal, the Life Management Science Labs. We are champions of life management science, providing structured insights informed by science and inspired by practice on key aspects of conscious living. Each week, we bring you scientific and practical insights on each element with the expert knowledge of professionals in the field. I'm your host, Dina Sargeant. Let's get started. Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode. There are so many challenges facing teenagers today, one of which may be the experience of teenage pregnancy or related to it. If your teen is about to have a child, it can be overwhelming for all of you. Now, how can you support your child through the challenges that lie ahead? That's what our show is looking into today. We're looking into the support parents can give children during this challenge and also how to have the conversation or the talk with a child. To help me discuss this topic further is Dr. Anthony Ajayi. Anthony is an associate research scientist at the African Population and Health Research Center with over 7 years of experience in conducting research and policy engagement in adolescent sexual and reproductive health, HIV, and maternal health in sub-Saharan Africa. So thank you so much, Anthony, for joining me on the show today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's my pleasure, Dina.
So to talk about your research a little bit more, so how did you get into wanting to research a little bit more into adolescent sexual and reproductive health?
That's an interesting question. I would say it's a bit accidental. So my first piece of research focused on civil service workers, and it was a bit of a challenge to get them to speak to me. I was to interview quite a number of them, but I struggled. It took over 2-3 months just sort of getting them. So I thought to myself that maybe interviewing young people will be quite easier. And so when I was doing my MA, I decided to focus on students, and it was quite easy to get students to talk. But now, marks the beginning of my interest in adolescent health, because subsequently, I sort of, when I begin to read about some of the challenges they face, and I begin to develop much interest in understanding some of these challenges. And my MA topic was on emergency contraception. And the findings are quite interesting or even shocking. The need to prevent pregnancy, it's such an important need for young people. But then often my research shows that, they lack knowledge. Or even so, some of the methods they rely on have no proven efficacy. You see girls say things like, you just drink salt and water after sex and that prevents pregnancy. Or they say, oh, you just drink soda. Or, they argue that there are ways you can just remove the sperm and things like that. And today, now my MA thesis, the paper I wrote from it is one of my most read articles up to today. I titled it Use of Non-Emergency Contraception and Concussions as Emergency Contraception among students in Nigeria. It's been read about 280,000 times in the journal, which is quite rare for a journal article. And that sort of, marks the beginning of my focus on adolescent sexual reproductive.
Yeah, it's so interesting to see how much teenagers act so much like adults, but they don't have the amount of knowledge that adults have, especially when it comes to contraception and all these different methods that are sort of now available. And I mean, I know when I was growing up, because I grew up in a religious school, we didn't have sex ed classes. We didn't have the talk wasn't something that was given to us. So it's very interesting to sort of um, see how important it is, but the fact that even though it's so important, we still don't have the opportunities, and kids still don't have opportunities to really understand it a little bit more and sort of understand how their body works in that sense.
Yeah, I would say, young people, has now become a key battleground for anti-rights movements. They talk about the need to protect children, that educating them would make them initiate sex. And of course, they talk about family values and all these arguments just to ensure that young people do not have access to information. But the mistake they are making is that young people can't access information from friends. So the meaning, have a boyfriend, they can have this conversation about relationships with their friends. And if they engage in sex, they can actually discuss with their friends some methods of preventing pregnancy. They can even look it up online. So, I mean, you can't completely hide information from young people. But, obtaining information from friends then means that you are not obtaining information from the most, correct source. Because friends can tell you things that they also heard from somewhere, which you can't really tell where the information originates from. So sex education is meant to provide accurate information on sexual and reproductive matters. I mean, including, right to bodily autonomy, including, even issues of consent, menstrual hygiene, just name it. There are a lot of issues that is discussed under comprehensive sexuality education, for example. So it's not just about, you need to engage in sex and how you need to. In fact, I'm not sure that's even covered in most of the sex education, the matter of sex itself. But just around protection, around building your agency, making informed decisions, are some of the topics covered under sexual and reproductive health. That is so at odds with religious views. So, in your case, you attended a religious school, so I can't imagine that they probably would not permit such topics. And now, for example, for most parts, it's common on the continent of Africa, where I do most of my research. And that's why I said young people have become the new battleground for anti-right movement. Just sort of using them, to create emotional outrage, or moral outrage, so to say, when it comes to issues or matters of sexual and reproductive health. But I mean, but I do not necessarily believe that comprehensive sexuality education would then be the reason young people engage in sex, because they're already doing it. And on the continent of Africa, 1 in 4 adolescents would become pregnant or a mother before they turn 19. That's huge. In fact, estimates from UNFPA shows that it's up to 11 million adolescents in Africa that become pregnant annually. That's a number of people. That's quite a huge number of the population that's becoming pregnant on year-to-year basis. Of course, there are other reasons beyond comprehensive sexuality education. Maybe in countries like Niger or Chad, there's limited investment in girls' education, and there's a lot of focus on child marriage. So maybe by the time you turn 15, you're expected to be married as well. So that also contributes. But of course, in East and Southern Africa, you can argue that lack of comprehensive sexuality education contributes to adolescent childbearing.
No, I think there's such a wide range of reasons, and I think especially the lack of education really plays a huge part in teen pregnancy, in the chances, in the issues that sort of come along. Because if you're not educated, you don't know what to look out for. You don't know, especially when it comes to, I mean, including the whole idea of consent, which is what you mentioned a little bit earlier. it's that we don't have that understanding of what consent really means, especially as a teenager. You're young and naive, and that whole idea of being young and naive sort of plays a huge part in with the lack of not being educated in these different issues. So it's so interesting, and I can't wait to dive into this a little bit deeper. But before I do, I love to start off with a little bit of an icebreaker, just to get to know you as a person before we go ahead and discuss you as a professional in the topic. So when I say these questions, just say the first thing that sort of comes to your mind. And yeah, so I'll just go ahead and get started. So what is your most recent book that you've read?
That's quite an interesting question. It's something along the line of AIDS is dead or something.
Okay.
No, it's a book written. It's more like a critique of the global AIDS given to Africa, and now ineffective it's become over the years. So I think it's titled "AIDS is Dead" or something, but I can't remember the title. Sorry. Yeah.
No, that's okay. No, it's. This is why this is one of the most difficult things about the whole show. This is the most difficult questions about the whole show. The next one is a favorite movie that you have.
There's so many, but I think for me, my most favorite movie of all time is Troy. I can, just sort of follow through the entire movie and sort of repeat what you're saying because I've seen the movie several times. Yeah, sort of love Troy. Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay, I don't think I've ever met someone who loves that movie.
What?
It's such no, yeah. For me, it's such a difficult movie to get through. I've watched it a couple of times, but I think I can't. I don't love. Who's that one? The one that is played by Eric Bana. I forgot his name, but I don't love him as the character, so I can't really get into it.
I mean, for me, I sort of love historical history generally. So for me, just sort of, watching the movie like the old times, that sort of vibe makes the movie so appealing to me. Yeah.
Okay.
And I love history generally. It's just sort of learning about, it's 18th century. Just I always imagine what the world was like before today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that. How about a favorite podcast that you listen to?
Yeah, sort of listen to a bit of everything, from science podcasts to sports to this one is difficult.
Well, do you have a favorite genre of a podcast that if you had to pick a genre of a podcast to listen to?
I would say sports.
Okay.
Sports, definitely. Football. That's probably the one I listen to most often, almost on a daily basis. Yeah, I'm a sports fan, a sport lover.
I mean, I could tell.
Sure. Yeah.
How about a famous role model that you have?
I would say it's growing up, I grew up in a remote town in Nigeria. So I would say my first role models are my mom and my brother. I'm the last child of the family, so I have one an only brother. So it's sort of being the first child, sort of be the one to sort of lead, and you sort of look forward to emulate him as well. But also my mother, because my dad was never at home. It's always busy working. So most of the lessons I learned growing up was also from my mother, the value of work, honesty, integrity. Those I learned from my mom. But again, I would say when I started reading books, I read I read The Gifted Hands by Ben Carson. And sort of also inspired me quite a bit. So yeah, I would say my earlier role models are probably my mother, my brother, as well as, just sort of reading about Ben Carson.
Wow,
And his
it's
story, yeah.
always nice to sort of hear a mother being their role model. It's always a really nice thing to hear.
Yeah, I agree.
So, talking about parenting and joining us on the parenting show sort of fits in really well. I know that everyone has a very different definition as to what parenting is to them and what parenting really entails with a lot of people. So, what would your definition of what being a parent would mean to you?
So that's an interesting question because just 2 years ago, I started my own journey as a parent.
Oh,
I've
wow.
been, yeah, I've been, learning every day about parenting. So for me, parents are like God on earth. And for me, the duty of care, it's never ending for parents. So parents are not only life giver, but they also have huge responsibility in terms of nurturing care, in terms of upbringing, teaching of values, provisioning, just a bit of everything. So a parent is everything to a child. Yeah.
Oh, perfect. So, what piece of advice would you give to a person who's expecting a child to be aware of when they're going through that transition of being a parent?
I would just say they should embrace it. It's probably one of the most fulfilling feelings you ever have to become a parent and to take on that responsibility. So for me, I mean, just embrace it. When you see the little one smile at you, it's probably one of the best feelings you could ever have. So just sort of embrace it, and give it your best. Um, I would not say it's completely easy. The sleepless nights, um, just sort of being responsible for a whole human being, 24 hours. Just even when the when the baby is sleeping, you still want to check to ensure the baby is breathing. You know, you're moving in between. Oh, okay, is the baby fine and all that? But again, and when they start to talk, oh my, oh my, oh my, when you come home, they welcome you with big smile, run towards you, it's tough but rewarding, I would say. So just embrace it, enjoy all the moments, and they grow up so fast. So document as much as possible, just so that you can see their journey and see them grow from so little one to the adult they will become.
Oh, that's a perfect piece of advice. And I think that's the most in-depth piece of advice that I've heard so far, which is amazing. Now, talking about the whole concept of teen pregnancy, more specifically, adolescent pregnancy as well. Um, so, how would you go ahead and define or explain the concept of teen pregnancy, adolescent pregnancy to our listeners today?
So adolescent pregnancy is simply, I mean, I prefer the term adolescent pregnancy than teen pregnancy, and here's why. We've seen cases of 10-year-olds, 9-year-olds, 11-year-olds, 12-year-olds become pregnant. The, that age groups are not regarded as teen. They are adolescents. So I think adolescent begins from 18 to 19. Of course, it's not as common as pregnancy happening, between the age of 13 and 19. Of course, even less common, is a pregnancy between the age of 10, even to 14, but it happens. But age 15 to 19, we see lots of adolescent pregnancies. So when we think about adolescent pregnancy, we're simply saying pregnancy occurring at the age group 10 and to 19. Often those pregnancies are planned or unintended. As you know, young people want to enjoy their childhood so pregnancy is probably the least things at the back of their mind. And of course, they are not ready to be parents. They themselves have been parented, so they are not ready to be parents. So it's just from the idea of dating, trying to imitate adults, like probably get them into becoming pregnant so early. So for me, adolescent pregnancy is simply pregnancy that occurred between the age of 10 to 19, and in almost 90% of cases, or even more, those pregnancies are unintended.
Okay. And so how does the whole idea of teen pregnancy, adolescent pregnancy, and parenting intertwine or even influence each other?
Now, that's an important question. When we began defining who a parent is, I sort of mentioned that a parent is like, a god on earth for a parent. So for adolescents to become pregnant, parents have a lot to contribute, either actively or passively. So I do know, because I'm working on an article on social exclusion and adolescent pregnancy. That's my recent project, and I've been reflecting a lot. Reading through the transcripts, and so it's just of trying to understand the data. So I would try to choose my words carefully, because I don't want it to appear as though I'm blaming parents for adolescent pregnancy. Some parents themselves are helpless when it comes to preventing adolescent pregnancy. And I'll probably go a bit more into that. But just to say, parents have this huge responsibility to care, to nurture, to provide. But often they are unable to meet these responsibilities, especially in the African context. Not that they are unwilling, but just they lack the means to adequately provide. And I give an example because of the work I'm doing in a low-income urban informal settlement in Kenya. Most of the parents in low-income urban informal settlements are either unemployed or work in precarious job. They work precarious jobs. Precarious jobs means you are an house help. You earn very little, so little that it's just sufficient to buy a grocery. People earn as low as $100 a month.
Wow.
So, and or maybe if you are so lucky, you earn maximum about $200 a month, and that's so little. But that's not the low income. Is not only what makes the work precarious, it's also the time demand of such work. Sometimes you have to leave your own children to go live, to do full-time kind of living housemaid, whereby you leave, Monday to Saturday, or even Monday to Sunday, all days of the week, work for money. There's no start time and no close time. You just sort of work and work and work and work. You help in nurturing, rich to middle class children, but at the expense of your own children. And if you stop working, then what happens to you? How do you feed and how do you meet your basic needs? So the choice of raising your own children and working is a tough choice you have to make. And oftentimes people work so as to be able to at least have money to buy groceries for their children. That means that the children are without care, without supervision. And often because of the low income earned by their parents, by the time they, reach puberty and begin to approach adulthood or transition to adulthood, chances are that their needs are not adequately met, because now they have needs. They need to buy personal effects. They need to buy hygiene products. They probably even want to own a phone, and maybe some of their colleagues or friends in school own some of these things. So you see, the parents that earn $200, earns barely enough to put food on the table. So they probably may not be able to afford even something as basic as bathing soap or creams, and these things are really important, or even underwear, or even clothes to look good for the children. So what then happens is men approach them, promise them all these things, promise to take care of them, and then of course they also want to date. Because they interact with their peers, and often they lack the agency to make informed decisions at that moment. People get pregnant for something as basic as menstrual pad, even the soft drink and all these things. And a lot of them are naive as well, so they do not, have, knowledge to make informed decisions and informed choices at that age. That's what I see happen, because adolescent pregnancy, we must also be realistic, is far common among low-income earners than, say, among the rich to middle class. It's not to say that it does not happen at all among middle to upper class, but you can even describe it as something that is rare, among that class of people. It's something that's really, really common among low-income earners, but children of low-income earners. So I wouldn't generally now say it's a failure of parenting, but to some extent, lack of parental supervision, inadequate provisioning contributes to a great deal. Contributes a great deal to adolescent pregnancy.
Okay. And how can parents, when going through these different issues, how can parents really address the children on sort of their lack of agency, the lack of autonomy? How can they do that effectively?
Yeah, I got asked these questions a lot, even by parents, because I've been in this space for quite a while. And you see parents walk up to me to say, Anthony, now I'm getting worried because my daughter is turning 12, 13. And how do I begin to have this conversation with my adolescents? And I felt like, there is no easy answer. Because parents prefer to just sort of provide the abstinence, don't get close to boys sort of information. If you get close to boys, something bad will happen, something terrible will happen kind of information. Parents sort of rely on fear-mongering, fear tactics. And when girls get close to boys and nothing happens, they sort of, even get closer to boys and, on and on and on. Parents do not want to be explicit about matters, sexual matters. But I believe it's important that parents build that relationship, the open relationship, create that space, a safe space where they can communicate, matters of relationships to their children. I think it's really important. Parents should try not to be not to be abusive. They need to show care, and they need to discipline in the right way. But they can still emphasize the need for openness, and the need to be able to discuss these matters, and then be able to accurately find moments to bring the teaching moment. Maybe you might just be watching a movie and with adolescents. I know, which is rare because the preferences are different. They are so different. But just find those sort of teaching moments where you can begin to bring up this conversation, because if you do not discuss it with them, they will discuss it with their friends. And it's better to hear from you than from their friends, because they can they can't hear things that are probably untrue. I've heard people that, in my research, say that, because, over the past few years, I've been trying to understand the lived experiences of pregnant and parenting adolescents. And they've told me things like, I don't know, that's how people just got pregnant. I thought you need to engage in sex, a lot of times before you become pregnant. And you wonder, where did they hear that from? And some would say, yeah, it was my only second attempt. And I felt like I still have some sort of, more times to do it before I become pregnant. So, and those are things that young people might discuss among themselves, especially very young adolescents. And that's why it's important to have these conversations and to be able to explain to them how people get pregnant, what parenting entails, and whether that's the choice they want to make for themselves so early in life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all these things are important. You need to find moments to discuss these matters. They need to understand how people, become pregnant. Don't just stop at don't get close to boys. Explain to them it's natural to have these feelings, to like boys. But except you want to become a parent, do not probably get into A, B, and C, and just be open and honest, candid with your conversation with your children.
I think the hardest thing is trying to balance being the friend to your child, but also disciplining them. And I think like I've heard so many stories so far in the show, and it's one of the difficult things to really want your child to tell you everything. At the same time, you want to be able to tell them that they shouldn't be doing this or they shouldn't be doing that. So there's it's a hard balance between being the person that they can tell everything to, but also wanting to tell them that's not the right thing to do.
I do know. As a parent of a 2-year-old, anytime I told my 2-year-old to stop doing something, she just sort of go ballistic and, lie on the floor and protest and protest and protest. Don't touch the TV. Oh my, she starts crying, Yeah, finding that balance can really be difficult. And for adolescents, they tend to also feel that they want independence. They feel that probably they are controlled too much, and I can imagine they can really be rebellious as well. So yeah, but I think nurturing care and building that relationship starts from day one. You need to create opportunities for them to express themselves. And you need to encourage them to express themselves, early in life. If they're able to express themselves, they'll probably be the one to say, I heard this from my friend. Is it true? They might probably be the ones that will bring the questions to you, and then becomes easy to discuss those issues. So, just sort of raising kids to know their rights, to be able to express themselves, can contribute to bridging that gap between striking that balance between being a parent and being a friend. Yeah.
And talking about some of the signs that sort of go off and some of the warnings that are sort of given, what are some of the key signs that teenagers might be at risk for teen pregnancy?
Yeah. Now I'm sort of reflecting on the interviews we did with parents, and the parents were quite vivid in their descriptions of these signs. So I'm just sort of going to draw on those interviews. So parents often say things like the sort of associations that their children keep. Some associations they are uncomfortable with. You see them go out a lot. They become very secretive about where they are going, where they've been. Sort of find any excuses to be out there. And then yeah, that's an important sign to say something might be happening that requires your attention. And of course,
Mhm.
depend. I mean, this question is twofold. Some children live in sort of um, loosely tied neighborhoods where people can access your household as well. So especially when you're away, um, so you might
Mhm.
see them receive female male friends, uh, especially when you're away, or you see them also visit a lot. I'm not saying that visiting itself is bad, but it's important for you as a parent to know who they are visiting, to sort of know what's
Mhm.
actually happening, and keep your ears on the ground and to understand what is going on. But you will see sign. Rebellion it's an important sign as well, because when they want to go out, they want to go out. They even sneak out. They sort of rebel. I was discussing with a young lady who was describing how she got pregnant, and she told me at that time she just did not want to listen to her parents. She did not want. She felt like she was missing out. That, hey, look at my
Mhm.
friends going out, even going to club and party, but my parents was trying to sort of cage me, and I was so rebellious, and I rebelled. I even it got to a point she ran away from the house completely, and sort of moving with that boy that has promised her everything,
Oh
and he
no.
was in the process of sort of rebelling and leaving the parents to go moving with a boyfriend that she
Mhm.
actually got pregnant. So rebellion also it's a good sign. Uh, if they threaten to go out, it means they have somewhere they want to go live. So yeah, those are those are
No.
those are signs to look forward to. And then when they get gifts as well,
Yeah.
expensive gifts, it might also be a marker that they're in a relationship as well.
No, it seems very sneaky, but it also feels like signs that we've seen so many times before. And I know that my parents, they're telling me stories about what they used to do as kids, and um, it's so interesting to sort of see how not much has changed in terms of the sneaking around and running away. And I remember that my mom used to tell me that she got a nose ring when she moved out for university. But every time she went back home, she would always just take the nose ring out and pretend like it doesn't exist.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
there's so many signs that we've seen.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I like the fact that you emphasize that things have not changed, and of course that's true. There's not been a bit of a, and there's no change per se in terms of how young people behave. I think maybe the only difference now is that there are mobile phones and social media. There are lots of Hollywood movies. The kinds of things that people watch. Again, creating that excitement around relationships, around love, finding someone to call boyfriend,
Mhm.
and things as such. And also, even in terms of parenting as well, parents always want to cage their children and to ensure that they are not exposed to all these things as well. So even in terms of parenting, not a lot has changed as well. But I would say, this looking
Mm.
around remains an important sign to look forward to.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I think it's the most obvious sign to me. Now, talking a little bit more about some of the key challenges, what do you think are some of the challenges that are faced by adolescents who experience teen pregnancy? And how do you think that parents can best support them?
I know for both parents and adolescents, that is such a radical change. A change that parents do not look kindly to, or even so. You see parents react really uh, um, bad, of course, because they are disappointed. So parents might overreact sometimes, especially in our context on the African continent. You see parents even chase their daughters away from the home, especially fathers. Fathers do not want to hear about it at all. So it's a really disappointing moment. And even though that's the time adolescents need their parent the most in terms of support, you see parents even pull back their supports in a lot of our contexts. And that is really damaging to the health of adolescents. First, you see adolescents even try to terminate the pregnancies on their own. A number of them die as a result of unsafe abortion. Because in our context as well, abortion is considered illegal. And because abortion is illegal, you can't walk into a hospital to request for termination of pregnancy. So you see young people try to take care of the problem themselves, and they are advised to inject all kinds of concussions, or even insert sharp objects into their uterus. And in most of our studies on abortion, young people are predominantly the group that seek post-abortion care. In fact, young people as young as 10 to 24 constitute over half of women seeking post-abortion care. And often they are the ones who experience most severe complications. So parents need to be aware of that, and that whatever decision they make after finding out can have implications, and from mild to extreme implications, even death, because it might drive the young girl to attempt abortion if you're unkind to them. Parents also have been reported to become, both physical and verbally abusive and towards the adolescents, the pregnant adolescents. And then some withdraw, financial support, both for their education and for their upkeep as well. I would say these are not the right reactions that parents should make. They should rather instead try to provide even more support for the adolescents at this stage. And there are a lot of silver lining. I've heard stories of parents that opted to support the adolescents after the initial disappointment, and things turned out well for those adolescents eventually. And there are a lot of stories. I've had many of these stories. In fact, the deputy minister for gender in Malawi, was once an adolescent mother, and now today she's a deputy minister. So it tells you that with parental support, they can really rewrite their stories and make impact in the society. So, and that's the positive side, and that's actually what parents should focus on when this mistake has happened. It's not a time to pull back the support, but a time to even increase their support, both emotional and provisioning. It's a time to encourage them. They need to reassure them at this moment. I know it's difficult, it's tough. The adolescents themselves are really disappointed, even as much as their parents. Often they say things like, "Oh, I felt like I've disappointed my parents," and that feeling of letting their parent down, it's so overwhelming that a lot of them get into depression. Some get into sort of isolate themselves. And it's faced a lot of mental distress at the moment. A lot of them cry a lot. They are constantly sad. They withdraw from people. Quite a number of ways that they react that could be detrimental to their physical health. Some even attempt suicide. There's a young lady that took part in my interview that described one day that the father was so hostile to her because of her pregnancy, and she just felt like maybe today is just the day to end everything. And she was on her way to buy some poison to take to kill herself, and it took the intervention of the uncle that saw her on her way to the pharmacist. That sort of shared her up and even bought her, drinks, food to eat. Was quite kind to her and all that. And that's what stopped her from, killing herself that night. So parental reaction, when negative, can result into deaths, into mental distress, which is another key challenge they face. And of course, because they don't work, adolescents do not have jobs, so they need money, So pulling financial support at this stage means that there's no way for them to survive. And often, adolescents become pregnant by also, their peers, people of their age mates who also equally do not have jobs. And many of them deny paternity as a way out. So it seems like there are no options on the other side. Say, oh, now you're a mother, you need to go live with your partner. How are they going to survive? And some parents make that decision to allow the adolescents to go live with their partner, who then maltreat them, expose them to physical and sexual violence. So again, we've done some research that indicated that they also face intimate partner violence as well, and that could not be separated from their young age, their lack of agency, their naivety, and all that. So parents, we need to step in at this point to provide the nurturing care. Yes, and they should continue doing that.
So one of the next questions that I was just sort of thinking about was when it comes to a parent finding out, I think we've spoken about the female side when it comes to the pregnancy and telling the father. What happens to the male side of that, to the boy telling the father that he's gotten someone pregnant? Is there discussions on that a little bit more?
Yeah, that's quite interesting. So in our in my studies over the past few years, we've also been trying to understand how adolescent pregnancy affects boys. Of course, not the number, in terms of the number of boys that got people pregnant, they are not as many as the number of girls, becoming pregnant in that age group. But that's not to say that there are no boys, making girls pregnant as well. And you've seen policymaker contemplate expelling them from schools as a policy option to deter them from making girls pregnant. So boys also face similar challenges to girls. So from our interviews with boys, we've also had a lot about, parental disappointments in them making girls pregnant. Even the reactions from the community members are quite similar. So they socially exclude them. They don't want their children to interact with these boys that made someone pregnant. Of course, there's also a lot of paternity denial because of the fear of the consequences as well. So they sort of feel that the easy way out is just to deny responsibility, to say, I'm not the one. But of course, for those that accept responsibility, we've seen them probably run away from the home as well. You see a lot of them drop out of school again to work media jobs to be able to provide some sort of support. There's a particular case in our dissemination in Burkina Faso of a boy that came to share his story. And he said he knows a number of his friends that denied responsibility, but he chose to take up the responsibility. And now what he does is to work 2 days a week and then go to school 3 days a week just to be able to put together some resources to assist in caring for the baby. So there are stories like this, but I would say they face a similar challenge. And I think for them, one of the most significant challenges is their inability to be a father. They feel like they have shortcomings in terms of being the father they would like to be. And one of their key aspirations is to be a better father, to be able to have resources to raise their young child, which often they lack because of their age, because of their inexperience, lack of qualifications to secure good jobs.
Okay. No, it's really interesting because I think like when you say like seeing both sides of it, seeing the pressure that they both sides face, and seeing the amount of backlash that sort of parents are dealing with, both the boy and the girl sort of dealing with the pregnancy and figuring out how best suits the well-being of the child as well, because now there's a third generation that's now involved and having to figure out how to handle them and how to make sure that they are being looked after. So when it comes to the parents who discover that their teenager is pregnant, what advice can you offer to them to approach the situation with the understanding and the compassion that we were speaking about before?
So for parents, I think the first thing for them is to realize that this has happened, and to sort of understand what their options are. Chances are that they might find out late, and in most cases, that's probably what's going to happen. So depending on the decision they make, if they decide to keep the pregnancy, I think it's important to begin to reassess their role as a parent at this stage. So to find ways to overcome the initial disappointment. I think that's usually the first stage. You're probably going to be angry. You'll be disappointed, and those feelings are normal. It's gonna hurt. That's going to be your initial reaction, because we all, as parents expect a lot from their children. They look forward to their children just sort of conquering the world, dominating and excelling in academics, and let me just say that all these dreams and goals you have for your children are still possible, despite the disappointment of the early pregnancy. So that needs to, they just need to keep that at the back of their mind, that pregnancy do not necessarily mean the end of their educational dreams or these lofty goals and achievements that they expect their children to accomplish. And that's accepting that will probably be important for their own healing, individual healing. And I must say, there are two categories of parents. There are parents that take responsibility. That felt like they must have missed something for this to happen. And these parents tend to provide support because they believe they contributed to the pregnancy. And there are parents that do not take any responsibility at all. They blame everything on their daughter. So this particular group of parents, it's important that they quickly find healing, because whatever decisions they make will have lifelong implications for the adolescent child. So finding that moment to quickly heal, to overcome the disappointment, and to take on their responsibility as parents to both the adolescent girl and the baby that is to come, is really important. For me, I've been trying to read around what interventions can help support adolescent mothers to ensure their empowerment, to ensure their return to school, to ensure that they're able to earn decent living and all that. And one thing that is so notable is the fact that parental support seems to be the only intervention that can, result in all this. So it's important that parents realize that the adolescent is still their child, and they still have a duty of care to the adolescent, even though she's pregnant or parenting. So For me, my advice to parents is to take on that responsibility, to embrace that responsibility, and to continue to support the child. To ensure that, I think in particular, um, they might have to take care of the baby for the daughter to pursue her dreams. And that's important. And that's probably maybe one of the toughest part of it to take, having to now parent another baby, even though you thought, oh, I've passed that stage. But if you do not do that, then you might be compromising a lot on the young, on your own daughter accomplishing her dream. So you might have to do that task of parenting your grandchild as well, so that she can pursue her dreams.
I love that idea, because that was going to be the next question that I was going to ask you as well. In order for the child to also get an education, to be a bit more educated, and that's such an interesting answer, because I mean, you said it earlier that a lot of parents don't want to be thought that whole idea of parenting is over. They don't have to raise an infant ever again, but sometimes it's the best solution in order to make sure that that child's future is still going to grow, and that the one mistake is just not going to be their whole life as well. So, and that advice is also, it's a really good piece of advice, I think, in my opinion, because it's it's enabling the child to know that, okay, yes, you've made this mistake, but you're bigger than this, that you can do so much more than this.
Absolutely. There's an example. I was discussing with someone from Zimbabwe, and she told me that she got pregnant in her first year in the university, and she was planning to move in with a boyfriend, and she was thinking about they will build, she had this fairy tale of how they are going to build their own castle and things were just going to turn out well, and the parents said, no, you go back to school, we take care of this baby for you. And she said that decision helped her, and that's probably the most important thing the parent did for her, that results in better outcome for her today. She currently works with the UN Women, with the United Nations women today. And she told me that this wouldn't have been possible had the parents not make that decision to encourage her to return to school and care for the infants. And she said one of her nieces got pregnant, and the parents were so disappointed, so they sent her away from the house to go live with the family of the partner. And I think at 7 months or 7 to 8 months into the pregnancy, they reassessed their decision to just sort of go check on her to see how she was living. And they discovered that she's practically become the wife to the family. She was cleaning, even though she was, heavily pregnant. She had to fetch water from long distance. The way she was living was way, way below, or the quality of her life was way, way below what they provided. So they decided to pull her away from the family to come live with them. And today she's going to college. I mean, and that wouldn't have been possible if they had not reversed that decision of sending her away from home. So there are lots of stories, that sort of indicate that parental support is crucial. That's not the time to pull back parental support, but that's even the time to increase parental support.
Yeah, no, that's an amazing story. I love the way that they've sort of just come together again and supported her in such a better way that they know that they can support. And I love hearing stories like that, where the relationship between the parent and the child is still so strong, even after the mistake that the child made or the situation that the child's in.
Absolutely.
This This leads perfectly well into the last section of our show, which is the open mic. And this gives you a chance to share any research that you've recently wanting to be shared with the audience, any work that you're doing currently as well. So in the last minute, I'd love to give you the floor and just share something that you would love to share with our audience.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. I would say at the African Population and Health Research Center, part of our vision is to transform life through research. And in my own way of contributing, I've been done a lot of research to sort of understand the lived experiences of pregnant and parenting adolescents, having spoken to boys, having spoken to parents, even policymakers. We've come up with an intervention that we're currently testing in Malawi and Kenya. We call it Promote, but the title of the study is Action to Empower Our Adolescent Mothers. Through education. Yeah. So the intervention encompasses three components. One is conditional cash transfer. So it's conditioned on re-entry into school or vocational training. But also, we also provide childcare vouchers because we know it's important that not all. It's important to get that support for childcare for you to pursue education or pursue vocational training. And then life skill education is the third component. So we organize them into Mothers Club where we have them meet, I think bi-monthly, and then they go through all kinds of topics ranging from financial literacy to SRH, education, managing gender-based violence, and all these topics. But also for them to also interact, to know that they are not alone. There are other girls who got pregnant like themselves, so just to be able to also discuss and build that social capital among themselves. So these interventions are being tested as we speak in Malawi and Burkina Faso, and they have been well received by the adolescents themselves. And even though, the cash transfer appears so little, it's so significant for these girls. Remember I said adolescent pregnancy is common in low income settlements. So the cash transfer is really, really important to these girls. And hopefully, maybe by next year, I will definitely have the results of these interventions and be able to share. But that's what I'm working on, and that's and sort of just to encourage more people to donate to adolescent mothers to support them in your own little way. If you find anyone in your community, contribute, support, and those are my thoughts. Or now you can be part of the conversation. Sure.
Well, thank you so much, Anthony, for sharing a lot of your information, also sharing the cause as well. I think it's such a great cause. It's helping so many people, so many young people who don't know a lot about the world, but who are forced to be an adult far too early. So I think that cause is such a great one in order to help children grow their lives up a little bit more after a situation that they found themselves in. So it's amazing work what you're doing with that, and I can't wait to see how that goes in a year's time and how it all works out. Um, if there's a way that audience members would like to get in touch with you to sort of talk about this a little bit more, or just to reach out to you, is there a way that they're able to get in contact with you?
For sure. I mean, you can send me DM on my social media handles. On Twitter, my handle is at AIAJAYI. So just my surname with AI, my initials.
Okay.
So my initial is at
Okay.
Anthony Idu, then Ajayi at on Twitter. But also my LinkedIn, my Facebook, just search for my name and you can send me a message and I'm happy to respond. And if you must really talk to me, we can take the conversation further after the initial contact. Or you can just email me as well. My email address is
Perfect.
ajayi@aphrc.org. And my personal email is simply my surname and my first name, and ajayianthony@gmail.com.
Oh, that is perfect. I'll have those down as a link below, so it's easy access for everyone to find. But thank you so much, Anthony, for joining me on the show today and for talking about such an important topic, and definitely a topic that we don't get to talk about that often. We don't hear about that often. So it's so great to sort of see, and to see your work helping the community as well is such an incredible thing. So thank you so much for joining me on the show.
Thank you, Dina, for having me. It's my pleasure to speak about my work. So just providing this opportunity, it's really well appreciated by me. And thank you so much.
No, thank you for joining me on an amazingly early time on your end.
Yeah.
You've been listening to Raising Parents, the Parenting Science Insights podcast, produced by the Parenting Science Labs, a division of LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. More episodes are available from 10 life management perspectives and can be found by searching LMSL on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and other podcasting apps available on your devices. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider rating our show, sharing it, and subscribing to our channel, as it helps other people find it so that we can grow and bring you more quality resources. More of our work can be found on our website at pa.lmsl.net, where you can join our movement. I'm Dina Sargeant. Thanks for tuning in.